Our Inheritance, A Safe Haven Orphanage Mystery by Patricia, Asedegbega. Episode 3. Osanrobo had been calling his phone non-stop, and he had not picked up. He had no desire to speak to him. Also, he had nothing to report, and he suspected that after spending 3 days at home, he probably wanted to pressure him some more into helping him get his job back. "Good morning, Uche," Dorcas greeted after knocking at the door. "Good morning, Dorcas. Please let Mrs. Okafor and Mr. Omer know that their cars will be ready to be collected in the evening. Did you call her to ask if she wanted the radio fixed and give her the estimate?" Uche asked the woman. "I did. She said maybe next month, as the bill for this repair is already quite high for her," Dorcas replied. "Ask Daniel to see if he can try and get it working just for now. I know it will eventually need changing, but she did mention that she loves listening to a particular radio program whenever she gets stuck in traffic. We can give her that as a bonus. She is a good customer who is spending quite a bit this month." "I'll do that." Dorcas made to leave. "Another thing, Dorcas. From now on, 10 minutes before you leave, I want to go over the daily accounts," Uche said. "Is there a problem?" the young woman inquired. "I think what happened a few days ago is enough of a problem. I do not want a repeat of that situation to occur. And 4 eyes are better than 2. Ultimately, I am responsible for what happens here, and I need to be on top of everything. But Osanrobo is gone. This will not happen again. I have been quite responsible with my work. You have not had a single complaint about my conduct till date." Dorcas seemed to feel the need to defend herself. "It is not something open for discussion. Like I said, I don't want something similar happening again. The incident that happened before Osanrobo and I arrived, who knew about it?" he asked. "Just me and the boss. Nobody was called in for questioning. He just asked me to go through what I had done that day, and I think in the end, he chalked it up to the client being deceptive." "Thanks a lot, Dorcas," Uche said as he looked at the screen of his mobile that was once again ringing. He shook his head and the woman left as he turned his attention back to the supply order he was making on his laptop, intent on not letting the investigation that he could no longer walk away from distract him. 2 customers had asked specifically for him to work on their cars. That was something he was looking forward to. It was cumbersome that he now had to cross-check the daily financial operations. Could he work in such an environment of distrust? Uche sent the order to his boss and got up to check on what the rest were doing. His hand on the handle, he froze as he heard the sound of a mobile ringing, remembering what he had been told about Dorcas and the strange phone calls. Slowly opening the door, he decided to listen. "I can't talk now. Things are tense here at work. I just had a very disturbing conversation with my manager, and I have to be careful. The last thing I want is to have any issues. Don't call me again during working hours. I'll let you know when it is ready." Uche waited for a second as his mind tried to process what he had just heard. Everyone seemed to have a reason to have taken the money. Yet it wasn't a habit, to his knowledge. It had only happened twice, and in one of those times, he was not sure what had happened. Could it be a one-off? Somebody needed money desperately and acted when the opportunity presented itself? So far, 3 people were on his list: Dorcas, Albert, and Buddy. Where did Albert get the money that he gave to Buddy? Uche opened the door completely and nodded at Dorcas before walking out. Albert was fixing the air conditioning system of a car. Uche walked towards him. The owner of the car kept bringing it to them with the same problem, not wanting to spend more money on a permanent solution, and not stopping to think that if he had added all his quick fixes up, he was spending more. But there was no reasoning with Mr. Ayodiji. He believed that everyone was out to cheat him, and so he went from fix to fix, and then would somehow try to blame them for all the misfortunes the vehicle went through. "How is it going, Albert?" "Ah, Uche, same old. This man should just do the full repair. Can't you speak to him again?" "I did the last time he was here, remember? He accused us of not doing our work right, just so he will have to come here again and again. I told him what was wrong with his car. I even told him how much he had spent on the same issue in the last 6 months, but he refused to change the whole cooling system. He has been coming here since this branch was opened, so we have to do as he says. I have to say, it is so calm without Osarobo. I can't believe that the boss finally opened his eyes. A part of me feels sorry for the lad. He's only 2 years older than my son, but I try to speak to him time and time again, give him some advice, but he lives in an alternate reality, one in which he believes that if he sticks around long enough, he will inherit it all. How can one claim an inheritance from someone else's father? He just hung around most of the day in that bar with youths that did not seem to have any future ambition, acting like he had all the money in the world to spare. Abias from the bar told me yesterday that he owes a lot of money. Her madam is furious with her because she had continued serving him, waiting for the end of the month when he would get his salary and settle the bill like he had promised. The girl came here crying yesterday, asking for his address and for help from any of us to cover what was owed. I felt really sorry for her. She's only 16 and did not know how to refuse that loud group of men more drink when they asked for it. And then it was not enough that they had ordered and owed their drinks. They also ordered plates of pepper soup, claiming that they could not consume alcohol on an empty stomach. The owner of the bar has told her that either she comes up with the money or at the end of the month she will be sacked, receiving no salary. I could not give her much. My son is working on his final year project and he keeps asking me for money. Seriously, it feels like one can never earn enough. And my wife works too. Thanks to her, we make it to the end of the month. That woman saves at every possible opportunity. She is the queen of finding bargains, the man said with pride in his voice. Just like my mother, she sometimes surprises us with some small savings. I have no idea how she manages to keep any. But true, expenses keep coming up daily. It was so kind of you to help Bode out with all you have going on. Albert frowned for a second and then chuckled. That was just a coincidence. I had received some money unexpectedly. When the row broke out the other day, everyone left whatever they were doing to pay attention to it. Bode mentioned that his hopes for getting an advance were dashed, and so I gave him some money. I'm not really one for asking for advances, because you still have the same bills to pay when your salary enters your account. Only less money, Albert explained. But he has to pay you back, right? Still, it beats asking the boss if you can get the loan from your colleague. Uche laughed. Oh, he told me he had to buy some meds for his mother. I did not have the heart to ask him to pay me back. A mother is a mother. I lost mine and I know I would not have rested well that night, knowing his mother needed medical attention and I had some money in my pocket. That was really noble of you. Honestly commendable with all your family needs too. Uche frowned. Which story was true? The brother getting married or the mother being sick? And just how did Albert come across this money? Saturday came and Uche arrived at the garage with his two innocent-looking brothers. He glanced at them nervously, their faces devoid of any other intention other than washing cars and sweeping the yard. Considering that at home, some did their best to avoid their chores, Uche had been highly skeptical, but his boss had thought it a wonderful idea, saying it could be the beginning of some kind of mentorship scheme for youths. Nicholas was considered serious and responsible, but Small but Mighty had a knack for smelling out trouble, no matter how deep it was buried, and heading straight for it. So he decided to give a final warning to the two eager-looking boys. Okay, so you are here to wash those 3 cars and to sweep and clean the yard. Please don't get yourself banned from ever returning. I know you want to do some investigating. Just don't pester people or say anything about what I told you both at home. Don't let out that I went over the events that occurred with you. Nobody here knows that I am taking a closer look at things. Uche cautioned. Have we ever let you down? Small but Mighty asked, and Uche had to bite his tongue so as not to reply. With a wave of his hand, he sent them scuttling off, resolving to keep a very close eye on them, especially because Daniel was not known for his patience and would not hesitate to complain. Uche, Mrs. Moshun just called to cancel her appointment. She said she would call sometime next week. I just saw your brothers outside. So respectful the way they greeted me. One of them asked me what my job description entails. It almost felt like a job interview. Dorcas laughed. Don't be deceived. They can be a handful. I just hope they behave themselves and don't make me regret bringing them here today. Uche replied. Oh no, they really were adorable. It's so nice to meet youngsters that speak to one with respect and interest. One of them, the younger one I think, sorry, I did not catch his name, said this was an opportunity for them to scout for career choices. Who knows, you might have a future secretary there. Uche for the life of him could not see Henry sitting quietly behind the desk. The image made him smile. That's Henry, though no one calls him that at home. I do think it is good to look out for options. He stopped midway as the screen of his mobile came to life. Once again, Osarobo was calling. I see that he's calling you too. He has contacted me, but I stopped picking up his calls. He blames me for what happened. Dorcas said, looking at the screen. Why does he think that? Uche asked. Because he's one of those people that does not accept responsibility for his actions. Everything that happens to him is always someone else's fault. Now he's blaming me. On one call, he accused me of taking the money myself, and I asked him, knowing that the boss always looks at the accounts when he gets here, don't you think that having access to all the invoices and the totals that I submit myself, I wouldn't be intelligent enough to alter them so there are no discordances? I mean, I've worked here for 3 years. I know the man's habits. He was silent on that call. Then the next day, he called me to say that I was not a good co-worker, that I should not have mentioned his name at all, and he then accused me of wanting to get rid of him, and that was why I had not hesitated and thrown him under the bus. Dorcas shook her head at the memory of the conversation. He wants his job back and says he's innocent on this occasion. Claims that he was unjustly sentenced without a fair trial. He came to my home with his mother, and she blames me for what has happened to her son. I have a feeling that she will not be forgetting it anytime soon. Yes, I was in the office the other day when you mentioned it in the presence of our boss. How did they get your address? Not from me, I can assure you. Dorcas said the last bit quickly. Well, I'm not difficult to find. I am the boy from the orphanage. It was just upsetting for my mother and siblings. Uche remembered what had occurred and all the shouting that had gone on. Look, let me put your mind at rest. Osarobo is guilty. It all happened really quickly, and I did not remember till today. Your questions puzzled me, and so I tried to remember what had occurred that day. Though now, I understand why you have doubts if they had the guts to go to your home and accuse you. When I got back from making a phone call, he was looking into my drawer and gave a start when he felt my presence, and I can tell you, he had a very guilty look on his face. I think that was why his name just came to my mind immediately. But don't forget something. Osarobo's hands are not clean. He has taken a lot of stuff that he shouldn't have before, and Mr. Osunde said that it didn't really matter if he did it or not. His time here was up. Osarobo is a very stubborn person. Add that to the fact that he does not believe that his uncle means what he says whenever he scolds him. Only last week when he asked Bode to get him from the bar, when you had gone to the other garage, Mr. Osunde shouted at him and told him that it was his last warning, that the very next time he tried his patience, he would be out the door. The secretary said. And you all heard that? Uche asked. Yes, Mr. Osunde was really angry and raised his voice. Afterwards, Albert told him to be careful, that he needed to stop trying his luck, but he replied that his uncle would never do that to him, something about his grandmother not allowing it. Daniel and I shook our heads when we heard him say that. I remember Bode telling Albert not to waste his breath, saying that Osarobo was a lost cause. The phone rang and Uche picked it up as the secretary smiled and left the office. It was a customer asking him to please send someone to his home as his car would not start and they had to be at a wedding shortly. He could hear a woman, whom he guessed was his wife, shouting, "I have asked you every single day of this week to take the car to the garage, a car that we have had to push every morning for it to start, and you said it would be fine for today. If I get to church after the bride makes her entrance, ha!" The woman's words reached Uche loud and clear. "Uche, please hurry up. I know it is the battery. Please come prepared. I can't afford not to leave this house today. We must make that wedding. It is our sister's. I'll come back next week and foot the bill. You know I always do." The man pleaded. "Yes, sir. Someone will be there shortly." He promised and then walked out the office quickly, catching sight of Daniel wiping his hands in a cloth and speaking to Nicholas and Small but Mighty. "Daniel, I see you are through with that car. Please go to Mr. Oladipo's house. His battery is bad and needs to leave ASAP for a wedding. Take the jumper cables and this battery. It can be used with his car. I checked. Take the car." He offered Daniel the key to the car they had in the garage for similar purposes, and the man nodded and took it from him. "Can your brothers come with me? I'm teaching them stuff." Uche was left speechless for a moment at the request. Daniel teaching someone something? He nodded curtly and then left soon afterwards. They came back an hour and a half later, but Uche was immersed in work as it was a very busy Saturday. He saw the boys on a few occasions from the corner of his eye, washing cars and talking to everyone available. Just before they closed for the day, Tom Osunde drove in unexpectedly, and after inspecting all that was happening in his garage, spent a few moments talking to the youngsters before leaving. "He gave us 1,000 naira each," Small but Mighty exclaimed. "Do you know how many packs of noodles we can buy? And even more if Nick and I put our money together?" He held out his note with a perfect smile. Nick's was not so perfect. He was probably not intending to spend his part on noodles. "And the best part is that we have discovered who the thief is," Nick announced triumphantly, both boys observing him with very wide grins plastered on their faces. "Fine, the floor is yours. Let's hear this great finding of yours." Both boys had been lurking around after dinner, waiting for their mother, Chidi, and himself to finish with the weekly accounts, a Saturday night tradition. "First of all, Uche, I feel it is only fair that in the presence of both Mama and Chidi, you admit that Nick and I were on our best behavior because we had to practically beg you to take us with you, even though all we had wanted to do was help you," Small but Mighty requested solemnly, and the three adults burst out laughing, and then all the attention was on him to give his verdict. "I can't use the expression that they were as good as gold, because I kept getting the feeling that they were up to something all the time, but the truth is that I did not get a single complaint," Uche conceded. "And we got asked back. And we got some money that we have decided to put towards the expenses of next month," Nicholas said as he deposited his part on the table and the other boy followed suit. Their mother laughed. "I think maybe you guys can go with Helen to the market and give us all a treat with your combined money. Maybe you can provide a breakfast or dinner with your hard work." Their mother winked at them, and Uche could not help but laugh at Small but Mighty's shocked face. "For all 15 of us? It is impossible to do that with this." "Don't worry, Henry. Helen is the best negotiator in the house. We'll school her well so she stretches the money as much as possible," Nicholas said as he produced a notebook which he opened and looked at them all. "So first of all, we have talked about it and would like to make it abundantly clear that we do not want to train as mechanics. We do not want to work on Saturdays. A Monday to Friday job will do just fine. Also, we found the job to be quite stressful, to be honest. When we went with Daniel to the house of the man whose car had battery problems, his wife was all dressed up, pacing up and down the patio, and at first, she only shouted at her husband, But then she started on Daniel, who kept silent for a moment before telling her that if she insulted him one more time, he would leave things how they were and go back to the garage, and then she went back to shouting at her husband. "There's no way I'm going to let myself be put through that," Small but Mighty said, looking at them all seriously, just so the adults understood the finality of their resolution, drawing more chuckles from them. "Yes, I agree with that. It wasn't the best experience. At a point, I thought she was going to throw a bucket of water on us, like she had threatened to do. How can one utter so many insults and then go for a church wedding? Had I been her husband, I'd have just gone back to bed and let her sort herself out. Anyway, we did strike some very interesting conversations with the employees, things that they would not tell the manager or the boss. For example, Albert told us about his family. He told us how his son failed the entrance exam to the university the first time, and things were difficult money-wise, but he managed to get extra money to help pay for extra lessons for him and the inscription for the exam again. He had been working in the other branch then, and how now he feels so happy that in the space of a year, his son would be a graduate and all his sacrifices will be well worth it. Nick explained with a knowing look on his face that did not make Uche jump at any conclusions yet. Then his phone rang and he looked at it and made a sound of impatience, but he still picked it up. It was Osarobo. He asked why he was calling him. If no one else was picking up his calls, that he was to take the hint and stop being a nuisance. We were slowly washing the car he had finished working on and listening to the conversation. At first, we could not hear what Osarobo was saying, but soon he started shouting and he said, loud and clear, "Albert, don't let me expose you. You know what you did." Henry continued and opened his hands in triumph. "So, your suspect is Albert, but you have no proof. He wasn't mentioned as being in the office that day. Uche stopped halfway, frowning. Albert had suddenly come upon money and had given it to Buddy, and it was interesting to note that he had been working there when the first incident had occurred, a fact that he still was not sure was relevant or not. See, you have arrived at the same conclusions we have, and so, case closed. All you have to do now is to speak to Osarobo. He will tell you how to clear his name, revealing what he has on Albert," Nicholas declared, looking around the room with evident pride on his face. "Yes, but is that all you guys got after spending all day at the garage? You just crossed Albert off your list after listening in on that phone call and did not investigate the rest? Did you both read the detective novel I lent you?" Chidi asked, chipping in for the first time. "We did, and we followed the procedure. I did write down a few things. Just don't know if they are worth spending time on," Nicholas replied, and Uche, with a hand gesture, told him to go on. "So, the person we saw less of was Dorcas, the secretary, because she was at the reception most of the time, except when she walked to the backyard on 2 occasions speaking on her phone. Small but Mighty saw her after the last call give a white plastic bag to a youth that seemed to have come specifically for that, as he had been waiting outside the premises for her to come out and left immediately after. Bode was a suspect for a short while I was raking the leaves around his work area. I heard him tell the customer sitting under the bench next to him that his little sister was in the hospital. Apparently she had been hit by a car, and that the medical bills just kept piling up. The man gave him some money when he was about to drive off and told him it was to help him out with what he was going through. He looked around and put it in his pocket, but someone saw him because Daniel walked up to him and said, "Bode, you haven't changed. One day you will get caught and get into a lot of trouble. Don't forget the narrow escape you've already had." Then, soon after, you came out and asked him to go to the customer's house, and we were invited to tag along. Nicholas finished his report, looking very satisfied, as Uche thought that he was even more confused than before the report was read, if that was possible. "Oh, and one more thing. It would only be fair to warn you. Daniel really doesn't like you. I heard him murmur when we got into the car. He's going to get Uche into trouble. Not my problem," Small but Mighty added, trying to be helpful, just when Helen walked into the room and both boys went towards her, waving their money. "Helen, you are in charge of taking us to the market so we can buy a meal for everyone. I'm thinking you can manage 2 loaves of bread And that spread that Mama has unsuccessfully tried over and over again to convince us is the same as margarine to go with it. Small but mighty said, and everyone laughed. The two boys and Helen left the room, arguing as Uche remained pensive. Chidi patted him on the back as he also left the room, chuckling. See, that is why I make it a point to not take any of them to work with me. To stay up to date with Patricia Asedegbega's work, make sure to subscribe to this YouTube channel by clicking on the subscribe button and hit the bell for notifications.